You have no clue what happened yesterday.
Savannah State had a 2-pointer on the board for like 30 minutes. That was it. Kennesaw State, not Savannah State.
I think Yost is Yost still at FIU? I think he is.
Oh.
He's a legend.
Second time in 2024 that the Kansas City Chiefs will match up against the San Francisco 49ers. The stakes are a little bit different. Well, it might be the Super Bowl again for one of those teams. Let's talk about it.
Oh my God.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Welcome into a live game preview edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC, our tremendous partners in Possible here. And I am here with my tremendous partners. Wednesdays are Matter Days here on KC Sports Network. Matt Swanson, Matt Hamilton, Matt Lane here. Matt Lane, how we doing today, my friend?
You know, we're doing all right. We are still fighting through this man cold. We're overcoming. We're kind of on the back end of that now. We are still in the middle of our like 50 whatever days of football every single day that's riding right now. We got old Sam Houston in Western Kentucky and a rock fight going right now. That's a big one. It's a big one here. But besides that, we're doing pretty good. Hamilton, I don't have a Chiefs game to ask you about. So I just want to ask you this. Which wide receiver traded for earlier this week has a bigger impact on their new team? Amari Cooper going to the Buffalo Bills or Devontae Adams going to the New York Jets?
It's a great question. I do think it's Amari Cooper just because the Bills just don't have anything else working right now at the wide receiver spot. So I think just when you're talking about the impact he's going to have on that group, like I do think Devontae is still a better player, but the impact he's going to have on that offense, the Bills desperately, I think, needed to make that move. Whereas the Jets, like you saw positive signs of it starting to work with what Garrett Wilson did, with what Breece Hall was able to do. It wasn't as desperate. Obviously, it's going to help them a ton, but I think Amari Cooper, if the Bills don't get Amari Cooper, I think they have no chance to get through the AFC. I think Amari Cooper gives them a chance now.
I think it's funny that the Bills couldn't make it a half a year without a wide receiver one, and the Chiefs just won a Super Bowl with like MVS as their wide receiver 1-2 for half the year. That's just fun. And now MVS is cut from the Bills.
Now he'll be back. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Hamilton, do you think you have a better beard than Kyle Shanahan?
Yeah, I do.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the swagger. I think you do too. I don't know why I was thinking about that, but I think you do. And I think the Chiefs might just have a better football team than Kyle Shanahan's Niners as well, too. We're going to talk about that. This is a very pivotal game in the Chiefs' schedule. This is obviously a big game for both sides. A rematch of the Super Bowl and also Super Bowl Live as well. These two teams have matched up in the regular season over the course of the last few years as well. I think Fred Warner mentioned that he has played the Chiefs 4 times now and has yet to beat the Chiefs in his career at this point. Chiefs have even gone into San Francisco in the last couple of years and beat them too. I think it was like the first game that Christian McCaffrey was, I think it was his very first game there, and he looked pretty good. But these two teams will be matching up on Sunday. Looking forward to that. And this is our game preview episode. It feels weird to be doing it. It's been a couple weeks since we've got to do one of these. A little rusty. We'll see. We'll find out. We're going to start with the offensive side of the ball. And Maddie Lane, what's one big thing on the offensive side of the ball for the Kansas City Chiefs that you are paying attention to, Chiefs versus Niners?
Oh man, there's a lot, but I guess the big thing is the Chiefs are coming out of a bye week. What did they, what did they work on? What did they adjust? This team loses Hollywood Brown in the preseason leading up to the start of the year, and it sounded like they were still kind of anticipating getting him back early this season until like right before it started. So they might not have changed a whole lot offensively, like structure-wise, what they were going to do in the passing game with the news of Hollywood Brown's injury, and then that gets a lot worse than it was initially thought to be. And then a couple weeks later, you lose Rashee Rice. They haven't really had time to adjust this passing game, to adjust the offensive structure at any point in time from when this news became final about both guys. So what do they do now? Does it just simply become what it looked like against the Saints before the bye, where Juju Smith-Schuster just gets a lot more volume over the middle of the field? Do they have bigger roles for guys like Xavier Worthy or McCole Hardman, who we saw get more reps? Like, what does this look like coming out? And I just kind of mean the big picture, because I don't know. Andy Reid likes to make changes on the bye week. I think we've all circled this bye week as things are going to look different afterwards. And the more I think about it, what the Chiefs did for the first 5 games might be stuff they've been planning, to do since the middle of the summer, and they hadn't really changed it up until now at this point in time.
What say you, Hamilton?
Yeah, and I especially think, the Worthy element of it is really interesting here off of this bye week, because I agree. I think, that's the one thing we've seen the flashes of it. We haven't seen it fully get going yet, and obviously there's a need with all of those wide receiver injuries to get him integrated, get him going a little bit more. That's what my eyes are going to be on. Also interested to see, with another week, what this run game looks like against this Niners front that's a little bit banged up right now, and especially on the interior.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great point as well. I'd like to see them get Xavier Worthy involved here. I think I do think that like Xavier Worthy is the big thing when I'm looking at this offensive side of the ball, and like I'm paying attention to the most, and how the Chiefs are able to integrate that into their offense even more. And I talked about this, against the Saints. We saw a couple things getting utilized in that game where you thought that seemed like is a little bit more intentional to try to leverage the abilities of Xavier Worthy. Having him short motion into a blaze out, I thought was a very, very Xavier Worthy specific play call where you're trying to, create that quick change of direction, that suddenness. You're worried about that short motion into a deep over or some kind of vertical, and you just break off a quick out route. We saw him hit that deep over later in the game, or you have that deep over available later in the game. They just weren't able to get it to him. There's some opportunities, there's some meat on the bone that was left there. And, I think just giving Patrick Mahomes a chance to reset, giving him a chance to look at the tape a little bit more in depth and just see how, open and how many opportunities that getting the ball to Xavier Worthy could present him. I think he's starting to develop more comfort and really trying and forcing and working himself to develop more comfort, under, in that pocket. And I think it's a work in progress right now. However, I do think that, that will come. And if it does, I think that's where the Xavier Worthy experience starts to get unfurled even a little bit more. But I do think that they're going to try to funnel some targets to him even more than they have. Maddie, how many catches do you think Xavier Worthy gets in this game? Give me a guess.
Oh gosh. Okay. I'm trying to think. It's hard with the Chiefs because they do so much stuff behind the line of scrimmage with screens and these little like jet sweep, little pop passes things. So those all count, right? And I don't, yes. I don't. That's what makes it tricky. I think in this game though, he comes out and we'll see him have the most catches he's had all year. We'll say like 5 or 6. I think he's gonna be involved more in the offense than he has been, right? And I do think, like you're saying, it's gonna be on, I don't want to say real routes. It's not like he hasn't been running real routes with all these clear out things, but they are gonna ask him to broaden his route tree a little bit more, I think, coming out of the bye week. And I think you would definitely come out, test it out against a team like the 49ers, who we talk about all the time. Andy Reid might keep some stuff in his back pocket when he plays AFC teams, especially AFC contenders that he expects to see again. When he goes up against NFC teams, though, he usually, empties it a little bit. He usually throws a few more things out there. He likes to put a few more things on tape. He likes to test things out because, worst case scenario, you're not seeing the 49ers again until the Super Bowl, right? So, you're not too worried about showing them something that they can use against you later. So I do think you get a bigger Worthy game here. I am just curious as to how that usage comes. And that's why I said, that bye week's enticing to me. Is he going to be in the slot? Is he going to be still playing from the same alignment he has been, just a broadened route tree? We'll see. But yeah, I'll go 5, 6 catches. Hamilton, do you have a guess for how many catches we think Worthy's going to come up with?
Yeah, I was going to say 6 as well. I do think we see him use a little bit more. And great point too on the Chiefs kind of emptying the bag. We saw it in that Niners game you referenced earlier a couple of years ago, where they just beat the living crap out of that Niners team in Christian McCaffrey's first game. But yeah, I agree, Kent, with Mahomes. I think this bye week came at a good time for him because I think a little reset needed to happen. Right. It does seem like a lot of the issues he's been having relate to that comfort in the pocket. He just doesn't look as secure back there as he's looked in years past. And that's the thing is, are they finally going to cut out the turnovers? I think that's one of the big things I'm looking for coming out of this bye too, because to be 5-0 with the turnovers and with some of the issues they've had there, it makes it even more impressive. And it just speaks to, obviously we know the ceiling of this group, we know the ceiling with Patrick Mahomes, but even if it's not statistically the type of season we're used to seeing from Mahomes, if he can cut out those turnovers, it's going to be really hard to beat this team.
I think, and they're kind of getting closer to that being a necessity now too, as well, because when you have seen like what they went through last year was it's different from what this year has been so far, but there was struggles with the pass catchers, a lot of inconsistency, a lack of trust. The offense looked out of sync. They weren't the same kind of offense that we've become accustomed to in Kansas City. And what did the Chiefs do down the stretch that ultimately allowed them to become the version of themselves that they needed to be to win the Super Bowl? Well, it was, hey, let's trim the fat. Let's get rid of some of these players that we've tried to, funnel the offense through or try to give opportunities to, like a Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore. Yeah, sometimes their hands were forced with injury, but they were eliminating bad football from the equation. And they were putting the ball in the hands of players that were going to be trusted. I think, I think turnovers in general, and largely, yes, I know Patrick Mahomes has been the one that has been the one making kind of the most of mistakes right now. And some of that will kind of come out in the wash, I think, eventually. I think the ball security will start with him eventually here, and like he'll start, eliminating those mistakes. Because I think right now it's like 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, which is a ratio we are not accustomed to here in Kansas City, especially since his average depth of target is one of the lowest in the National Football League.
It is the lowest of all time since 2016, recorded by Next Gen Stats. It's not just lowest, one of the lowest this year. It's the lowest of all time since Next Gen Stats has been recording it.
Right. So we're looking at this. Yeah. There's some ball security issues on top of not throwing the ball down the field very much. And that's an alarming proposition. But I think, I think, yes, the ball security is going to become a point of emphasis very quickly here for this team, just because, they are having to solve and work through some things as they're trying to get this offense rounding up into shape with, with the players that they have on the roster right now.
No. Yeah. And we did see it. Sorry, we did see it in that playoff run last year. He was able to eliminate. He turned the ball over a lot last year too during the regular season, and those 3 AFC playoff games didn't throw a single pick. And you think about it too in those games, if he turned the ball over one time, I don't know if they beat Buffalo. I don't know if they beat Baltimore. Mm-hmm. So there's a huge key to that run. He was able to say, all right, I know what this is. This defense is going to be the key to us winning this thing. I need to make sure we don't give the opposing offense short fields, and we're going to be able to make enough plays to win. And, I do have confidence he'll be able to get back to that. Now's the time. I mean, the Chiefs have the luxury of working through some things and trying some things. And, that's kind of what the regular season is for them. As ridiculous as probably 31 other teams, but it's true for them.
Mm-hmm. No, it is. And I think the turnovers are obviously a big thing because it's crazy because Patrick Mahomes, generally speaking, has been pretty high. If you look at Pro Football Focus's turnover worthy plays, he's been always pretty high on that. But the actual turnovers he has been relatively low. Of a percentage of those have actually been converted. This year, it's kind of the opposite. He's very middle of the pack, if not towards the bottom, and turnover worthy plays. It's just the actual turnovers he's had have been really bad. He has thrown them directly to defenders, and they've just looked really bad. And they've hurt the team a ton. We spent a lot of time this year talking about why the Chiefs offense isn't working and what the issues are. Lo and behold, the Chiefs offense is first in success rate this year. They are second in rushing success rate. Their drop back success rate, I believe, is top 5. They are a very efficient offense. They're just not explosive whatsoever. And so when your most dynamic, your biggest point swing plays, because everything is just shorter, because of the low ADOT, because the short rushes, the biggest point swing plays coming on turnovers is really going to kill kind of like the final output. So that's why they're a little bit lower if you look at like EPA or their total points and stuff like that. It's just the lack of converting in the red zone. And then these turnovers have stopped them from putting up points when the offense generally has been pretty efficient. Like, I think that surprised me a little bit to see their success rate being quite that high, because it doesn't feel like it when you're watching, but then you go back and think, well, a lot of drives do stall out because they start the drive with the penalty and it's 1st and 20, and they don't really have the chunk plays to make up for that. Or they get to the red zone and they kind of fade out in the red zone because they're not quite, figuring out how they're going to win down there. There's a turnover. So offense, moving the ball, moving it well. It's just, there's not a lot of dynamic plays to it, specifically even in the run game. Like, I know Hamilton brought it up earlier, like, will the Chiefs continue to run the ball against the 49ers team that has been not great versus the run, especially if you keep the 49ers and like base personnel. When they get out there with all 3 linebackers, they've been pretty bad versus the run altogether. The Chiefs play, 12, 13, 14 personnel this past game a lot. And so they're going to try to pull the 49ers out there into base. They will try to run out of it, pass out of it. That could be another area that they, stay ahead of the sticks. And I think that's where this offense is at best, is as long as they're not getting in those like long passing downs that doesn't expose the tackles, that doesn't make Mahomes feel like he has to press and just check it down short of the stick. So that run game might be a huge part of keeping this like efficient offense going.
Oh, absolutely. And like, I agree. Like, I think that's I think some of the efficiencies are a carryover of what they worked through last year, right? And some of the carryover of just, hey, that was what the hallmark was mistake-free football, not turning the ball over too much, efficiency every single drive. That's kind of what the hallmark of last year's playoff stretch in the last couple of weeks. After they lost to the Raiders on Christmas Day, they started working through some of those things, and they started to find their footing a little bit. And I think the cool thing is we see that we see the explosives are there in the passing game. Like, there's opportunities for that to be a thing here sooner rather than later. And we'll see if the point of emphasis for that comes out of it. But yeah, they've done a good job of moving the ball. It's just, you're hoping to find a little bit more explosion now. You're hoping to find that they're able to generate some explosive plays, both run and pass. Maybe they can extend some of those carries beyond the 6 to 10 yard box it seems that they've been operating within for the entirety of the season. Hamilton, anything else on the offensive side of the ball?
Just as far as the Niners defense is concerned and attack, it's been interesting for them because they've dealt with a lot of injuries. They've kind of done a good job of limiting the explosive plays too. We haven't seen, the one DK Metcalf play that was called back, the Tutu Atwell play in that inexplicable loss to the Rams. Those two aside, they haven't given up a ton of big plays, and it was interesting to see last week against the Seahawks, especially without Xavier Worthy, who it looks like will be coming back. Talanoa Hufanga injured. Seeing some of these young guys really step up. Renardo Green, Malik Mustafa, who's I see is limited in practice as well. But seeing those young guys step up and make plays was kind of shocking, like given the caliber of players that they lost. And that's really the reason they were able to beat the Seahawks, was seeing these young guys step up. So at some point, that youth and that depth is going to be tested, and it's probably going to be this week. But it's just been interesting to see kind of in the post Steve Wilkes era, it got off to a little bit of a rough start. They've had a rough time at the end of some of these games. But overall, like, this defense is finding its footing even with all the injuries. So going to be interesting to see if the Chiefs are able to exploit the lack of depth that the Niners have right now.
Maddie, anything else?
No, I mean, I think we've covered the big parts of it. I mean, I think the thing for the Chiefs, like, typically when we go into a 49ers game, it's like, hey, what's the Patrick Mahomes and Fred Warner mind game's going to look like? Because, like, that's the matchup that always goes through my mind. And I think we've seen Fred Warner, still the only linebacker in the NFL that matters. That's my stance. He's the only one that, matters. And I think even against the Chiefs, you see that impact show up some, but you've also seen Mahomes get Fred Warner a couple times. Like, you've seen him change the arm angles and throw the ball around him, trying to recover. Like, Fred Warner will play some of his like coverages incorrectly. Like, he'll flow the wrong way on purpose, knowing he can get back to where he needs to. And you've seen him make pass deflections, interceptions on these kind of things. And we've seen Mahomes get him a few times. So I think it's clearly a mind game they go through. The thing, though, is this year is the Chiefs aren't really throwing over the middle of the field a ton. So, like, I don't know if we're going to get that battle back and forth as much as we would have in years past. But if it does come out of the bye week and they get back into it, that is always kind of like one of my favorite matchups when these two teams go off, is just watching Fred Warner and Mahomes try to figure out each other, try to figure out how to stop each other. Because I just think that is just one of the one of the few defenses that has one player in the middle of the field that really does kind of dictate what an offense can do.
Have some Fred Warner talk here in a second too. We'll get in the players to watch on the offensive side of the ball. Hamilton, by the way, this is brought to you by Tickets for Less. Promo code KCSN gets you the best available discount at ticketsforless.com. Hamilton, who is your offensive player to watch for the Kansas City Chiefs?
I'm going with Juju. I think obviously last time we saw him out there, it was a monster game. I think the general consensus is we don't think we're going to be seeing that on a regular basis. But I don't know. I want to see what he does. What his encore performance is going to look like. He was able to fill that Rashee Rice role a little bit and operate underneath, get some stuff going after the catch. I do think he still has something left in the tank. I think he showed. I don't think it was a complete fluke, but I think he's going to be really. If the Chiefs don't make a move at receiver, I think he's going to be really important to what this offense is going to be able to do here over the larger part of the season.
Nope, that's a good one. I'm going to go with, I think, Kareem Hunt. And I think the reason is for Mr. Hunt that we want to go with him is because he's been running well for the Chiefs. He's done a fantastic job, stepping in when the Chiefs needed him. But I think in the Chargers game, it looked like he had a good amount of juice left. Like it looked like a different guy than we had seen in previous years. And not that he wasn't good versus the Saints or anything like that, but I thought he maybe looked like, a little bit slower again. He looked a little bit closer to the athlete that he was with the Browns. And is that because he came off the couch and was immediately thrust into action for the Chiefs and had to play again in back-to-back weeks? So now you give him the bye week to get, to keep getting in shape, to get back to being football ready. And now you are going to see a guy that is running as hard as he was in the Chargers game, that has that same level of explosiveness. If so, and if not, okay, maybe you got to go back into a timeshare. So I just think this game will be a little telling coming out of the bye week, what version of Mr. Kareem Hunt you are going to get for the rest of the year. But then also the 49ers run defense over the past 2 years really hasn't been that good. And they're down a couple guys in that defensive line right now. They're still down a couple linebackers, Greenlaw's still not, available to play after the injury in the Super Bowl. Fred Warner, I think, is an awesome linebacker. If I'm going to poke at one weakness to his game, is if I get free blockers running right at him in the run game, that's where you kind of negate how good he can be at some other stuff. So this could be a game where I think Mr. Kareem Hunt can really kind of dictate the pacing and keep the Chiefs ahead of the sticks the whole time.
Okay, so I'm going to go with Travis Kelce. And I'm fascinated to see how they get him involved, but I'm also fascinated to see how the San Francisco 49ers try to handle him. If you recall, late in the Super Bowl, the Niners matched Travis Kelce with Fred Warner, one of the best linebackers in football. No, not one of the best linebacker in football and one of the best defensive players in all of the National Football League. Let's just go with that. He's absolutely insane. Good draft. I think we have some good draft receipts on him, by the way. Anyways, that doesn't matter though. But they lined him up over Travis Kelce and had him play man coverage. It was a mixed bag, but also pretty good. I think, Kelce got him on that one under route, but outside of that, they tried to throw a back shoulder fade to him in the red zone during regulation. Fred Warner had it locked up. I'm fascinated to see. Look, the cat's out of the bag there. I'm fascinated to see if the Niners go to that a little bit here in third down. If the Niners go to that a little bit in the red zone, just to say, all right, Travis Kelce, you're a year older now. Let's see what you're made of here. Let's see what we got. Let's see what we got going here. I'm curious to see if they, try to pair those two up again. They might be. And you want another thing? They probably both will be standing at the 50-yard line of this game for the coin toss. And I'm calling all Chiefs fans. You could be on the field at the 50 inside GEHA Field for the official coin toss at a Chiefs home game this season. Visit Chiefs.com/GEHA now. You can enter to win a chance to be on the field for the march to the three-peat. Plus, you can score other exclusive prizes. Enter for a chance to win at Chiefs.com/GEHA. GEHA is the proud partner of the Kansas City Chiefs. I would like to be at a coin toss with Fred Warner and Travis Kelce in the Super Bowl yet again. I think that would be pretty fun. Just saying that again. We're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this.
Shop Chiefs tickets and more with no fees. Plus, save big with code KCSN at ticketsforless.com, the official ticket provider of KC Sports Network.
With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/KCSNLab. That's mintmobile.com/KCSNLab. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/KCSNLab. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Thanks, everyone, hanging out with us tonight. Game preview edition of the KC Laboratory, getting you ready for one of the biggest matchups for the Kansas City Chiefs in their regular season, Chiefs, Niners, and perhaps a preview yet again of the Super Bowl. It's time to talk about the defense, the chief fence for the Kansas City Chiefs, getting ready against a very good, talented offense in the San Francisco 49ers. A lot of the same people back. Obviously, Kyle Shanahan still in his bag. No Christian McCaffrey to this point. Jordan Mason, we'll see what happens. There is some injuries in the running back room, but ultimately, I think Hamilton, you just kind of trust with what Kyle Shanahan's able to do with. I mean, we could be the ones getting, in the backfield and we'd probably get some yards. Hamilton, you'd be doing it with a better beard than Shanahan. But what do you think about what Kyle Shanahan's been cooking this year so far?
Yeah, it's been interesting to see how they've managed a lot of injuries. This is, outside of McCaffrey, this is maybe the healthiest they've been offensively all year because they've missed Debo at times. Kittle's been out. And then Ayuk, I think, is finally starting to get up to speed. He got off to a slow start to the year as well. So, we'll see, as you said, what happens with the Mason injury. But we saw Isaac Guerrero fill in. And you saw the speed element that he brings to things when on that play that sealed the game against the Seahawks. So, as you said, with that system set up for a lot of running backs to have success, and you get somebody with that type of speed, I wonder if we see him mix them even a little bit more this week as well to give him a little bit more speed back there. But overall, with this Niners offense, I think Brock Purdy is having a phenomenal season, and I don't know if it's getting talked about it because they're 3-3, and you look at it like, it's a disappointing record. They should be 5-1 when you look at two of the games that were kind of inexplicable. If Jake Moody doesn't get hurt against the Cardinals, they don't lose that game. And the Rams game, I mean, the 6 drops, the Ronnie Bell drop at the end, just killed them. So, it's 3-3, but they played better than that in my estimation. And a lot of it is Brock. I think he is taking another step in his game. I've always been a fan of his. I've always thought he got kind of a bad rap because he doesn't have the biggest arm. He's not the most, but he processes so quickly. He's pretty damn accurate. And he does extend plays and make things happen, as we've seen time and time again. So it's really coming together for him this year. And I think with this Niners receiving core, especially at its healthiest, with the exception of Juwan Jennings, who's dealing with a little hip injury, I think, this is going to be this is where we're really going to see like how much Snead's absence is going to impact this Chiefs defense, because as we know, the Niners have so many different guys who can kill you, and you never know who it's going to be. And Shanahan and Brock are going to make some things happen out there. So really interested to see what this Chiefs secondary looks like when they're really going to be tested this week.
For sure. I mean, the 49ers run game this year has been good, but it hasn't been the same level that it has been in the past. Like, this offense isn't running through the run game and then just scheming guys wide open off of play action. Not that that's not still an element that's there. Like, I'm not saying that, but you watch them play and so much more of it is actually like pure drop back passing stuff, right? Like Brock Purdy's not getting a ton as near as many yards after the catch this year. It's not near as much play action. It's a lot more pure, drop back game and Brock Purdy creating out of structure when he starts to scramble. We were kind of joking about Patrick Mahomes having the lowest ADOT of all time in next gen stats like history. Brock Purdy, if he continues this pace, I think he's like tied for like one of the highest, if not the highest average depth of target this year. And this is the year where he is doing the most quote unquote big boy passing that's kind of always been used to critique him throughout his career. So like, I think this offense so far has been very passing game centric. You would always have to wonder, is that like because there's no Christian McCaffrey, or is Kyle Shanahan like gone back and said, okay, when we go up against these certain teams, they find a way to stuff out our run game, and then we don't necessarily have the best way to get our offense going off of that. So maybe you're going to try to change it this year. I don't know. Like, we don't know if that's like a chicken or an egg thing because McCaffrey hasn't been there. But like the biggest challenge for the Chiefs is going to be figuring out how to match up with the 49ers weapons, because they do have still very talented weapons. Thankfully, Jalen Watson's been playing really good for the Chiefs this year. So like, while they'll still miss L'Jarius Sneed, Watson has kind of stepped in and played at a similar-ish level so far. It's early, small sample size, but a similar level. So, and the way Brandon Ayuk's played this year, he has been, a little step back from what he's been. So you might feel okay with the Chiefs secondary versus some of these weapons. It's just a matter of, who's going to make the plays when the passes come, who's going to make the plays. It's going to be a kind of heavyweight battle there, I think, between both sides.
And, I think the Niners still want to try to funnel this, through the run game if they can. They're going to try. They're still always going to try. And if they can establish that run, then, Kyle's going to cook. So, like, I think the Chiefs are still going to have to do a really good job of playing gap discipline. Spags is going to have to throw some different stuff at them, some run blitzes, some games up front. But I do think that, I do think Brock Purdy has taken a step, and the just true drop back game has gotten better. And Hamilton, I think what you said was right. Like his processing speed's been really, like, I've been very impressed with that with when I've watched him. It's just like, he is on time and getting the ball out, but he's doing such a good job of distributing the football. And things can get a little bit more chaotic at times for him against the blitz, but honestly, I think he's handled things a lot better as he's grown, as he's developed. I think I said this last week, just as like a little aside, but like, I am slowly becoming a Brock Purdy stan almost. Like he is underrated. He is playing very good football, and he does deserve a lot of credit for what he's put on tape so far this season. He's taken a step. He's gotten better. He's used the experience that he's gained over the last couple of years and in the playoffs, and he's taken it to heart. And I think he's earned Kyle's trust more, and he should have. And so that's a interesting pairing to see. This is the best quarterback that the Niners have had in the Kyle Shanahan era by far. He earns more trust than he's earned more trust than what Jimmy Garoppolo was getting from Kyle Shanahan. And this iteration of this offense is kind of scary. It's wild to see them off to such a slow start. I know there's been a lot of injuries and all that kind of stuff, but I do see the vision for this thing being a challenge as the season progresses. What do you think the key is to stopping the run? Or did you have something else on that, Hamilton? You looked ready to cook.
Oh, I did want to say, just in response to what Maddie was saying about the chicken or the egg issue, if it's because of McCaffrey or because of Kyle kind of evolving things, listening to Brock in some of these pressers, I do get the sense that it is more of a McCaffrey thing, because he was talking about teams dropping more guys in coverage this year than they've seen in the past, and taking more guys out of the box. And to me, that's telling me, they're not as afraid of this 49ers run game without Christian McCaffrey in there. And he also talked about, he's holding the ball a lot longer than he did last year too. And he said, with them dropping more guys, some things aren't getting open as quickly sometimes, and I'm having to extend plays. I'm having to do a little bit more. So I do think it is the McCaffrey effect of it more than the design.
Oh, and before we move off the passing game too, like, I don't know how much more, but like, Brock Purdy's had kind of like a polar opposite year this year than he has in like his years past. Just everything about it. One of the things, like we talked about the positives, on the negative side, this year teams have gotten to him with the blitz. I mean, a lot more this year than they had in the past. I think last year it was like a big talking point going into that Chiefs Super Bowl matchup, how good he had been versus the blitz, how he was beating the blitz over and over again. This year, if you go look, like his completion percentage drops, his yards per attempt drop. He's taken more like a higher percentage of sacks on plays where he's blitzed. He's got 3 touchdowns to 3 interceptions when blitzed versus 6 touchdowns to 1 interception when not. Like, it does seem like because the 49ers are dropping back to pass a little bit more, teams are a little less afraid of the run game or the play action game, that they are getting to get into their, their blitz packages a lot more. I think we all kind of remember Brock Purdy talking to Flores after that Vikings game, just saying, how he got him all confused and had a lot of good stuff fixed up. If I were to pick the next defensive coordinator that like can probably mimic some of what Flores stuff did, Steve Spagnuolo is kind of your guy, right? So this might be a game, especially coming out of a bye week with that extra time to look like even, last week against the Seahawks or against the Cardinals when the 49ers were still playing well, like playing good football, the blitz was still kind of giving him a little bit more issues this year. So like, I just wonder if that is a weapon the Chiefs can unleash a little bit here, get that blitz percentage closer up to, 40-ish% in this game, a little bit higher than they normally do, just to try to fluster him, hope to contain him when he does, use the athleticism. But like, he definitely has not been as good this year when getting blitzed.
Yeah, and that's where I think this has to, from the Niners' perspective, this is where you really need Brandon Ayuk to be Brandon Ayuk, because he's the one that can win quickly and get open for you quickly. That's kind of, if you want to have a knock on Debo, that's the knock there, is his ability to get open right away and to get, to create separation. So it has to, Ayuk has to start looking like Ayuk again. I think if the Niners are going to combat some of those pressures from Kansas City.
Matty Lane, what are you watching for the Chiefs defense against the Niners?
I mean, we talked about we'll go back to the run game. The Chiefs run defense has been phenomenal this year. In years past, part of like the whole point of attacking a Steve Spagnuolo defense is get them in base, get them with their 3 linebackers out there. They're not going to be able to blitz as much. You will be able to run the ball on them a little bit because that's not kind of what they're built for. This year, that hasn't been true. Not only have they been like fine when they are in base defense, a lot of it's because Leo Chenal's been so good for them, but also like just everybody's playing assignment sound football. The defensive line's been good. The linebackers, the safeties, everybody's played the run really well this year. So getting them in base doesn't necessarily give you the same advantage that it has in the past. Like, they need to keep that up though. Like, you can't have all that unravel in this game, because I will say, like, the 49ers run game hasn't been great up to this point, but if you let them get rolling, if you let Garindo, if he's the guy that's out there, get some right. Okay, listen, if you make him make some cuts or read some stuff out, I don't think Garindo's hitting, making a lot of moves at the line of scrimmage to pick the right hole to make guys wrong. But if you let him get a lane, he's big, he's fast, he's going to get through it in a hurry. So like, I think the run defense needs to be sound. You want to force still Brock Purdy to beat you by throwing the ball and then lean back into that blitz game. So like, I just would like to see the Chiefs run defense come out and probably face their biggest test since Atlanta here. And like, they've passed all their other tests, but like their biggest rushing game test since Atlanta in this one.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to see kind of how that loss to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, I think, structured a lot of the Niners offseason, especially with the draft and the way they attack things, and really forced the Niners to address the right side of that offensive line as much as they could. And getting Dominic Puni in there is when you're looking at differences between the Super Bowl and now, I think that's a huge one for the Niners, because he's been phenomenal. He's already, I think, playing at a Pro Bowl, maybe even all pro level, with what he's been able to do for that offensive line. And that's the right side of that line was the biggest weakness I felt for the Niners going into that game. We saw what happened in overtime, especially to the right side of that offensive line. So that's what I'm going to be looking at that too, just how the impact that the Puni difference is going to make. Obviously, McKivitz is still a weakness, but Puni has made them a lot stronger there. And obviously, I think he's going to have his hands full with this Chiefs defense with Chris Jones at times as well. But I'm interested to see just the difference that makes versus that Super Bowl.
Puni had played guard at Kansas, moved out to left tackle his last year, wound up being an all-conference player there, and kicking back inside. Like, I think that was the right move for him. But yeah, I mean, he's exceeded a lot of expectations for a lot of people to this point. One thing about Isaac Garindo, if you look at this game against the San Francisco 49ers, and by the way, the Niners have a mini bye as well. So like, the Chiefs got a full bye, but they don't get the true rest edge that you would get on a traditional bye. Niners played on Thursday night, so they're getting a little bit of a mini bye as well. But Isaac Grindo, he had 10 carries, 99 yards against the Seattle Seahawks, 76 yards on one singular play. So it was very feast or famine for an Isaac Grindo. Jordan Mason was playing pretty well. He's more like a 4-yard per clip type guy. He did have one outside of one explosive play. So like if you're eliminating the 2 explosive plays for the San Francisco 49ers on the ground, a lot more human of an offensive run game. Still very good and still generating those explosives. But I think that's the thing for me is like, you gotta limit the explosive plays in the run game. And like, I think if you can keep those at bay, I think good things will happen for you too. And like the Chiefs have had some early down success against the run so far this year. They've made these 1 and 2 yard carries and putting these teams behind the sticks. And like, that's been a hallmark of how they've operated. And then earning the right to rush the passer. Hopefully the Chiefs are able to do that again in this game, limiting the explosive plays and I don't think we're going to see Jordan Mason, but if we do, Mason and Grindo. You have something else, Maddie?
Yeah, you know what a fun matchup is in this game? And it's not like offense, defense, things like that. It's just which offense is going to not suck in the red zone. The 49ers and the Chiefs kind of like really high up there in terms of moving the ball, getting red zone drives. But both of them, if you look at like touchdown percentage, once they enter the red zone, the 49ers are 25th in the NFL. The Chiefs are 29th. And there's some ties in there. That's obviously the gap. But like neither are particularly good at converting their red zone attempts into touchdowns this year. For the 49ers, a lot of that has been chalked up to no Christian McCaffrey. So they're kind of like struggling to figure out how they want to create that space. Who are they going to use as their mismatch weapons once they get into the red zone? For the Chiefs, it just seems like who is the guy? And it's kind of the same concept, just they didn't lose a McCaffrey. Just who is the guy? Who is the guy that's going to give you that mismatch in the red zone? I think they had anticipated that being a Rashee Rice, a big part of Rashee Rice's game. It was last year. It looked like it was going to be to start this year. He's now gone. So like which one of these teams, off a mini bye or a full bye is going to be able to come up with something in the red zone to lead to better success, because both these offenses have played a lot better than what some of the advanced metrics say. They just can't convert these drives into touchdowns. They kind of get bogged down when that space shrinks. So which one of these teams converts better might be the one that ultimately like takes this one, because they've both been pretty poor at it so far.
Yeah, and that's the one area where we saw the Niners get going a little bit the second half of last week. They kicked those 3 field goals in the first half against Seattle. But George Kittle, we know the Chiefs, the one area where the Chiefs defense has had some issues this year is defending tight ends. And they've been getting Kittle going now that he's healthy. Had a big game against the Seahawks. That's definitely going to be a matchup to watch how they handle him, because I think when you look at the Niners in the red zone, that's the one area where I think they do have a clear advantage against pretty much anybody that they face, but especially this Chiefs defense.
All right, let's move on to defensive players to watch. Again, brought to you by Tickets for Less. Promo code KCSN on ticketsforless.com will get you the best discount available for your Chiefs tickets at ticketsforless.com. Hamilton, who's your defensive player to watch for the Kansas City Chiefs?
I'm going to go with a low-hanging fruit answer this time. It's got to be Chris Jones for me, because as we talk, the ability to pressure Purdy is going to be huge here, to try to force the issue with him. And I love sliding him out over Colton McKivitz. That's a matchup that I think he can win pretty consistently. I'm interested to see how often they do that. Obviously, I think in 3rd and long situations, we're definitely going to see it. But even when he is inside, what the matchup looks like against Dominic Pooney, that's one I just, as a fan of the game, somebody who loves watching, that's going to be such an awesome matchup to watch when those two are up against each other, to see kind of, the rookie's been great so far. This is the ultimate barometer for anybody on the interior offensive line. So definitely going to be, we're always keeping an eye on Chris Jones, but especially in this matchup.
I got 2, Kent, so I'm going to be nice and let you go first.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with Leo Chenal then, because he's an asset in the run game. He is a dynamic player that the Chiefs will line up. They'll move him around. They'll let him run blitz. They'll let him impact the defensive front with some downhill violence and physicality, one of his hallmarks. This is a unique player, and I think part of the reason this team has had so much success against the run early on this season has been how he has been weaponized by Steve Spagnuolo. And I think that has to continue. And you saw it a little bit last year in the Super Bowl. That was a little bit of a coming out party for him. That was a great game for Leo Chenal. He had a fantastic performance in that game and gave you some optimism and some hope, for what he was going to be in the future. And he is not disappointed to this point in the season. So I think Leo Chenal will be somebody, again, weaponized like he was in the Super Bowl, and he has been all season, unleashing him against this run game and creating problems for that front. I think is a big factor in this game. I think it's one of the biggest factors in this game. So if he can stay on the field, and he'll be, if the Chiefs stay in a personnel to keep him on the field and keep him in base, I think he can really make an impact.
That's a good one. I had two. You didn't take either one, so I'll get to the both of them.
So we get both.
We're gonna start with the low hanging fruit of Trent McDuffie, though, right? We had to go with another low hanging fruit, and I think it's because Hamilton mentioned it, right? Brandon Ayuk hasn't gotten going this year, and if you want to pick a game or a big part of this, would be him getting going in this game, especially if the blitz is coming. Last year, the Chiefs used L'Jarius Sneed on Brandon Ayuk a ton to disrupt him at the line of scrimmage. Ayuk's fantastic route runner, but there can be wasted movement. It can take him a while to get there. He can uncover quickly and create a ton of separation, but he can take a little bit to get through his routes at times if you're going to get physical with him. This year, they don't have L'Jarius Sneed. Instead, you have Trent McDuffie, who's done a lot of traveling with number one wide receivers. I would expect him to spend a lot of time going with Brandon Ayuk wherever he goes. He had great reps against Deebo Samuel last year. I think this year he's going to draw the Ayuk flag a lot. And so can he still do well in that? Can he handle him? I think he has the skill set to. Maybe the 49ers give Ayuk a couple contested catch opportunities where we haven't always seen McDuffie play his best football, but this would be kind of a big challenge for that. So I do think him going up against Ayuk is a big one. And then kind of a sidebar of that is the way the Chiefs structure their defense, their safeties are eventually going to have to cover slot receivers or tight ends, especially if they push vertically. It's just the way that the Chiefs and Spags play some of their match coverages. We saw it against the Saints, right? They got Cook on that double move down the field. Don't care if that happens once every now and then. The problem is you just got to be ready for it. So if Cook is in that situation again, when the 49ers probably saw that exact same play, they're going to try to scheme some shots up there. These safeties have to be ready when they get pushed vertically by a receiver or a tight end to not just get beat over the top, because the 49ers will take those shots downfield. They have no qualms with throwing the ball downfield, really airing it out. It's like the safeties, Reed, Cook, Connor, when he's back there, have to be ready to kind of handle some of these vertical routes.
All right. It is game prediction time.
Ooh.
Hamilton, what do you have in the Super Bowl rematch?
So I don't know if I'm allowed to do this here on KCSN, but
yeah, you are. You're allowed to pick
I think it's fair to say that the Chiefs are probably not going to go 17-0. I picked them.
Bold.
I know. I'm sorry. Bold prediction there. But I picked them every game so far. But I just think this week, I think the Niners are going to pull it out. The kicking situation is going to be something interesting to monitor that could affect both kickers for the Niners dealing with some injuries right now. We'll see how that shakes out. But I think the Niners win this one 24-20.
I too think it's going to be, not that you said this, but I think it's going to be a little bit sloppy of a game. The Chiefs like to get a lot of these games. They try to make them a little muddy. They like to make them a little dirty anymore because they can win these games. Like when it comes down to it at the end, they trust themselves to win the games and they think that they're better than other teams. And history's kind of on their side with that. The tricky part here is the 49ers. Some of their guys have come out and said the right thing. Trent Williams say you can't get the Super Bowl win back by beating them in this game. And Deebo and Kittle said, they're a good team. We can't make up for losing the Super Bowl against them. Yeah, you say that publicly, but in the back of their mind, just watch the Eagles game last year, right? In the back of your mind, you want to get that revenge. And it's even worse for these 49ers because a lot of these guys lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl years before that. It's they've lost to them twice. Oh, and then they got bought by them in 2022 in the middle of the year on the Chiefs' way to that Super Bowl. So there's probably some pent-up emotion and rage against the Chiefs and this 49ers team that you really think that they would want to get out on them. The problem is the Chiefs are coming off a bye, and Andy Reid is really good coming out of a bye week. Still with Steve Spagnuolo, I think they are going to have some new wrinkles. So I think it'll be tight. I think it'll be close. I'm still going to take the Chiefs to win this one, 27-24. I think maybe that kicking game does come into a factor here. We have seen the Chiefs win some games because of missed field goals by their opposition, so that could be something that comes into play here. I think it'll be tight all the way through, but I do wonder also at the end of this if this is kind of a breaking point for the 49ers. You see these losers of the Super Bowl kind of fall apart the following year a lot of times. Like, it happens pretty frequently. If the 49ers drop this game, especially if it's another close game in a slightly heartbreaking fashion, like, how do the next couple weeks go for them after this? So tough one for them, I think, here.
Yeah, there's some opposing forces there, right? The revenge factor, and then versus Andy Reid coming out of a bye week. What happened last season when the Chiefs came out of a bye week, though? They lost a home game to the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that they had just played in the Super Bowl. So it's, a little bit similar to what we saw last year. Is like
Thanks, MVS.
that game was rough, and that wasn't the low point of the season. I can't pick against the Chiefs, though, and I can't pick against the Andy Reid track record historically right now. I think this game will be tight. I think this game will be close. There's some positive things on the offensive side of the ball for the Chiefs last week, and I think they're going to continue to tap into what they've got. I think Xavier Worthy has a big game. I think the offense puts a couple explosives together, and I think the defense continues to do what they do. The Chiefs manage this game well. They win this football game 25-22, just like it was in the Super Bowl in February. That is going to do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory. Thank you all so much for listening, watching, supporting KCSN. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later.
Make that trade, Veach. You know you want to. You're it.